good copy in the wrong voice is not good copy. So we're not minimizing the impact of the right conversion principles, but we are making it on brand. A lot of us have put so much of our personal life into our personal brand and made this hybrid definition that has started to use vulnerability as a marketing tool. I'm actually not a big believer in transparency. I'm a big believer in translucency. I want you to see a curated version, and that can be messy, but we don't need to see everything. We're gonna have a more refined, condensed version of you that is still 100% authentic. It's just not 100% of you.
Give everybody listening insight into what your Genius Zone is, what your business is, what you're doing right now.
My name is Justin Blackman, and I am a brand voice expert, which sounds a little douchey to say sometimes, but it's what people call me, so it's kind of what I have to stick with. But essentially what I do is I help people and brands figure out exactly how they want to sound on paper. So we put their best foot forward or their best voice forward and really figure out their unique point of differentiation and figure out what makes them different and bring that to life in their copy.
Cool. I mean, everybody knows probably listening what copy is, but where are the places that we're using this? Because it might seem like it's this fluff afterthought, but it is such a core thing that's showing up in everything that you're doing. It's like your digital footprint, right? It's not just, oh yeah, make sure that your emails land. It's like this universality to your whole brand, and you need to nail it, and it makes everything simpler.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest places that people personalize things is email, because we get a little bit more time to flesh out an idea and to connect with an audience. It absolutely works for social media and web pages and things like that as well. But voice is really your verbal identity or a written verbal identity, but it's a little bit more specific than just your general personality. It really does come down to your writing style or your speaking style. There really are two different versions. We all say that we want to write like we talk, but if you listen to the way that people are talk, it tends to be kind of rambly. And even now, it's like I'm rambling a little bit, where my writing is very tight. So I kind of help people understand what the differences are so they can get it across clearer.
So what's the core work that kind of needs to be done? Because I feel like even before you try to convey that into writing and into your copywriting, in your emails, in your website copy, what have you, there needs to still be this like pretty firm understanding of, knowing what your brand voice is, like knowing what your stance is. And I think sometimes that's really hard. I can do that for other people. And then for myself, it's really challenging to be like, well, what is the magic? What is the nuance that makes me special? So what does that journey or process look like to even start to extract and understand your brand voice so it becomes just consistent and steady in everything that you're doing?
Yeah, and there's a lot to it. You kind of mentioned it's harder to do for yourself. It's the whole can't read the label from inside the bottle type of thing. So when I'm working with an established brand, and that could be anything from, Fortune 500 companies all the way to like strong personal brands, sometimes what I'm doing is it's very mathematical based. So I think to zoom out for a second, one of the things that we need to do is define what brand voice is. And it's easy to say that it's like your personality on paper and, these fluffy definitions about, putting your soul into the work. And I mean, that works on a high level, but for copywriters, we need something much more tactical and tangible. So when it comes down to your brand voice specifically, it's three things. It's your vocabulary, the level of words that you use, whether you say something like big or grand or tremendous or humongous. Those words get bigger each way. So you're writing on a simple level or a more complex level. And then there's the tone, which is the emotions in your writing. So really just the feeling that we want to portray. And then there's the cadence, which is the rhythm of your writing. You can write short and choppy and staccato, or you can write long, wordy bird sentences that go on and on and on forever and just seem to have no end in sight, and long punctuation and ellipses and semicolons and dashes and things like that. And you run out of breath before you get to the end of the sentence. So what I mean by brand voice is that. So if you're an established brand, you already have a ton of content that's out there. And I literally use math to figure this out. I have programs and tools and calculators that will count your words per sentence, your average vocabulary levels. And then there are ways to analyze the tones and really get a mathematical, quantifiable way of figuring out how you sound. So if you have existing content, I just need to measure that and document it so we know around what levels to hit each time. This way we can make a brand sound consistent. We can make everything sound like it came from one person, even if it didn't. That is something that you can do for yourself. I've actually built some tools. There's a thing called verbatimtool.com So verbatim, actually, you can put copy in and it will tell you your measurements and kind of give you a base foundation. So that's one way to do it. Figuring out your stance, I mean, that's how you write, but what you want to say, that takes a little bit more deeper work. That's where some of the psychology comes in. And sometimes it's a little bit of brand therapy to really figure out how you want to sound, what really makes you different, what makes your perspective unique. And honestly, this is the stuff that AI has a really hard time doing. When you say, I wouldn't say that, it's because it doesn't understand who you are. It doesn't understand your stance in the world.
Yeah.
And the way that I do that, that's a much more complex process where we just have to spend about 2 hours really talking through everything. And there's a program that I have, or a session that I have called the Voice Binder session, where we start out with about 110 tone words. And we literally narrow it down until we're at about 5. And it's not like a general 3 adjectives and an avatar thing. We're not saying your brand is friendly, casual, and professional. It doesn't mean anything. I call that the trifecta of nothingness. It's so generic. And, if we say like your brand's friendly, well, I mean, what does friendly mean? How many friends do you have? Do they all sound the same? Are they all friendly on the same level? Like, we need to get ultra granular to figure out what levels you're on. And sometimes that does take some deep work, deeper than most people think, to really figure that out.
Yeah, I can see that 100%. And I love that you offer that all the way back to the person who's not necessarily as established, because I know that's something that I've struggled with, where you even maybe know what you like to consume, you like to see, but you're not really sure. I mean, it's like trying to look in the mirror and seeing something that you just cannot see. Like, you're looking at it, but you still just can't make sense of it. And so it's like you're a translator that can kind of bring in and say, okay, this is as a perceiver of you, and just hearing you express yourself, I'm able to really capture this. So I think it's a cool service to provide. And I think a lot more people need it than they realize, because I'm going through a rebrand right now. And I'm like, you can't just go and be like, oh, I love these colors and I love these fonts. And this is how I write my emails. You really have to capture the whole person. And I love that you mentioned AI. We've had great guests on here who've helped us personalize it more, but there is still such a human element to it. And just a funny note, I was thinking as you were talking, I am on somebody's email list who I know very well personally, and I see their content on social media, and I know it's not them writing their emails. And that's fine. Like, power to you that you've hired a team member, you've hired it's a great copywriter, but there is a disconnect between her brand voice and her content. I'm like, it almost makes me a little uncomfortable, because I'm like, this is not you, like, this is a weird, like, weirdo version of who you are. It's great, but I can tell it's not you. So there's definitely a disconnect if you don't nail that. Do you feel like that impacts like the deliverability, or not a technical deliverability, but the way it's received by people? Are they going to feel that the way I can?
Yes. Yes, they are. Well, I mean, it depends how well you know the person. But
Yeah.
I am a trained copywriter, and I know that the first few years that I was in copywriting and that I was learning all of these conversion techniques and how to write and things like that, best practices, the more we did that, the more all the copy started to sound the same for every person. When I learned brand voice, I understood how to inflect someone's not just their personality, but their styles, their quirks, their weird, I can't say the word,
Intricacies.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah, I can type it. I can't write it.
Right.
All those, their intricacies into the copy to make it sound like them, the way that they punctuate, the way that they, phrase their sentences, the way that they tell stories. Yes, there are ways that you can tell a good story, but if that's not how you tell the story, it's not going to sound like you. And one of the things that I say is good copy in the wrong voice is not good copy. So that there's a difference. The thing that I do is I teach additional rules to copywriting that weave in the brand voice. So we're not minimizing the impact of the right conversion principles, but we are making it on brand. We're making it sound like them. And I've worked with a lot of strong personal brands. I've created voice guides for Amy Porterfield, Stu McLaren, Todd Herman, Danny Ainey, Ali Abdal, all of these people who have a unique style. And most of them have brought me on because they have worked with copywriters who've written great copy, but lost elements of them. And they're like, it just didn't feel right. So where voice is a feeling, I can actually calculate what that feeling is to put it back in. That's kind of the foundation of what I do. So I work as a complement to great copywriting rules. I don't try to contradict it, because we have to get good writing there, but we do have to make it sound unique.
Yeah. Well, and I'm even thinking for myself, because I do copywriting in a certain capacity. I create really fun in the past, not as much now, but I create these really fun brand quizzes to help people segment their email lists. And so there's a level of creativity, and that's why people hire me, because it's the copy itself is fun and it's different. And we try to match their brand voice and their brand aesthetic and everything like that too. But even for my own personal emails, I think that when you're in that world of copywriting, you do get so heavy into the rules or the structures, and you're like, oh, this is where we should be bolding. This is how we should make it flow. And it's making me wonder as we're talking. I know the copywriting skill, but I wonder how much I have almost messed up my own brand voice trying to adhere to that more than, like maybe I'm writing more staccato style emails, but is that even how I talk? My videos, my content are, like you said, long winded, running out of air. And so I wonder if I've done a disservice to my own brand and my own emails where maybe it's still me. Sometimes I'm a little more abrupt, but that's something really important. If you do have, maybe you lean more and have that skill of copywriting, that you don't want to lose just that individuality in what you're writing.
It can mess with your head for sure.
Yeah.
And I say
I'm
this
like, oh
having
my
gone
gosh.
through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to write a lot of Facebook ads, and this was back in the wild west of Facebook ads where you can say anything, but it was all those really long, like single paragraph posts that you just scroll and scroll and scroll. I wrote, I think I want to say it was 239 of them over the course of 18 months. And
Mm.
when I went to go write an email for myself one day, I couldn't, like, everything came out like that. And I was like, this isn't me. And I had a mini panic attack. I'm like, I lost myself. I don't know how to write for myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like able to reverse engineer and get the math back. But the fact is, I never got back to what I originally was. And
Mm.
I did adapt and eventually had to get comfortable with that. And now I can kind of write in any style. But yeah, I did lose parts of myself. And I am conscious of when I'm writing an email, like, all right, if this paragraph is long, if it's going to be read on mobile, it's going to take up the entire screen. I need to format this to be kind to my readers. I don't want to lose myself. So I think the main thing is if you're saying something that sounds like you, the formatting can be adjusted a little bit to adapt to the medium. But as long as
Mm-hmm.
it's the right words, the right tone, that's the main key point. And I think that you're probably getting that across. You just adjust
Yeah.
for the medium.
Okay, good. I can breathe a little easier knowing I
Yeah.
haven't destroyed my entire email list. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about this because, yes, you've worked with people who have very established personal brands. I'm sure you've seen this in the industry right now, the marketing industry, business industry as a whole. There's a huge shift more towards building a personal brand. Even like big companies are trying to personify and personalize their branding. That can be really challenging when it's like, okay, I'm putting myself, there's a vulnerability on the line. Talk me through kind of how you've worked with people to help develop that personal brand that is the thing that they're selling and the thing that they're repping when it is personal.
Yeah. So this is where I, th- I always have to put a caveat that what I'm going to say isn't for everybody. There's been a major shift the last few years to put yourself into everything, to develop your personal brands. I think that we've gotten confused a little bit because if we actually go look up the word personal, there's two definitions for it. There's personal, meaning something that's yours that you own. And then there's personal, meaning private, not for public.
Mm.
What's in your personal diary? Like, yes, the,
Mm.
the diary is yours, but the stuff that's in it, that's the private type of elements. And I think that a lot of us have put so much of our personal life into our personal brand and made this hybrid definition that has started to use vulnerability as a marketing tool. And
Mm-hmm.
crying on LinkedIn. No, that's the private type of personal, not your type of personal. The oversharing of everything, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And some people don't like when I say this, but if you look at some of the people's LinkedIn headlines, and it could be like, I am an ADHD empowered virtual assistant or neurodivergent, or, depending on where you're from, like putting your ethnicity and things like that front and center for everyone to see. That's great. I have no problem with that. And I'm all for that. This is awesome stuff. But also remember, if you're applying for a corporate job, HR is not allowed to ask you those things. And you're
Mm.
offering it front and center, and people are going to judge one way or another, subconsciously or consciously. Those will have an impact. So there's part of me that's like, oh, you're kind of hurting yourself here. But then there's another part of me that's embracing it. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to define your own level here. But if some of that stuff makes you uncomfortable, realize that maybe your definition of personal isn't their definition of personal.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I help people do is figure out exactly what should be in their brand and what should be public and what should actually be private. So define
Mm.
personal brand as in what you actually do for something, how you show up online without your personal life coming on full display, which
Yeah.
can be great, but a lot of people who are coming to me are exhausted by doing this. And they're like, you know what? I'm getting known for the wrong thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not how I help people. Like sometimes I'm getting known for talking about a struggle that I went through, or a lot of times people come to me after they're going through a divorce and they're like, you know what, my partner was in a lot of the material and now they're not going to be anymore. And I don't know how to handle this. And sometimes they realize that too much of their personal life came into the personal brand. And I help people put boundaries on it to protect the value of their service or their product without all the other stuff coming into the way.
Yeah. Ooh, this is so needed right now. I've had so many conversations about this recently with fellow entrepreneurs, women who have been, I work a lot with influencers,
Yeah.
social media influencers. And there's been this shift. And I think it's been confusing for a lot of people too, because we started out with this over vulnerability, or not, I don't even want to use the word vulnerability, but just oversharing and like building that first version of the personal brand where it's like, here's my whole life, here's my children, here's literally everything we do, time stamped down to the second. And then there was this pullback from it for safety reasons, for just, okay, nobody actually cares. We don't want to just be influenced. We want reality now. Even though they were sharing reality, it was kind of curated reality. And so then it kind of got clinical, where it was all just about, okay, well, what's in it for them? And now let's just share hot tips and takes. And now we're shifting out where people want to hear from you. So they want the personality. But I think you just differentiated that so well, that a personal brand doesn't mean sharing everything that's private. For me, I'm even looking at where's the boundary of where my kids fit into this, where my husband fits into this, and knowing what I feel safe sharing, not from fear, but just like being very intentional and having forethought into what do people actually need in order to trust me, to see me as an expert, and for me to be able to do my job, to be able to help them, right? And maybe there's connection pieces that are going to help me go more viral or whatever, but is that a line I want to cross? So
Yeah.
kind of talk me through what your process looks like as you help people, or as you've started to see this too, in how we draw those lines in the sand and how we think about it differently. Because I think it is a mindset shift into personal branding versus personality, personal life everywhere.
Yeah. So it's going to change for everyone. And I love the phrase line in the sand. And I use this all the time. I help people create manifestos. And it's like, where's your line in the sand? But my
Mm,
favorite thing about this is the sand is not cement. You can brush out sand
yeah.
and you can move the line.
We can pull it back or move it
Yeah.
forward.
Every time that the tide comes in, the sand's going to shift. So
Yeah.
know that if you have like a line in the sand somewhere, it's okay to change that at this point. So I just want to start with that. But the way that it starts, and this is what we do in those 2-hour sessions, where we really try to figure out who you are. Yes, I am a compassionate person, or I am a sympathetic person. I am a whimsical person. I am a authoritative person. We figure out what all of these things are. But then there's things like sentimental. All right, if you're watching a video of this, so nostalgia, sentimental, there's things like that. If you're watching the video, you'll see that I've got Super Grover and Star Wars and Coraline shoes over there, and the books over there are all things from my childhood. Those are Justin things. Those aren't Justin.com things. Those are not things that necessarily are part of my brand. They're part of me. They show up on camera. Sometimes they get mentioned in emails or stories that I do, but they're not essential to the brand. They're essential to me. They're personal to me. They're not part of my personal brand. And even the color of the wall behind me, the bright blue, it's
Mm,
vibrant. I don't have a vibrant voice. I have a fun voice, but I wouldn't describe it as vibrant. There's not exclamation points all over my copy. So what I do is I figure out the things that are me, and then I figure out what of that should actually be in my brand. And what it comes down to, there's a lot of feelings in there. And this is one of my favorite things to say is feelings are gross. As a guy, it's something that I just used to say a lot going through therapy, just like trying to figure out who I am. Like, oh, this is gross. I don't like this. But what that actually means is think about it from an accounting term. Feelings are your gross accumulation, your total accumulation of everything that's happened from birth until this very moment. It's all of who you are. So feelings are gross, but your brand is net. So what we're going to do is we're going to find some of the things that are taxing or don't necessarily belong in your brand. And we're just going to remove those. And we're going to have a more refined, condensed version of you that is still 100% authentic. It's just not 100% of you. You might be the brand, but the brand is not you. It's a piece of you. We need to define what that is, because once we get that right, you can scale. You can bring in other writers. You can have a team. And the team doesn't have to be you. The team can be the brand. It has a little bit more wiggle room to say stuff. And it doesn't have to be exactly how you'd say it, but it can still be on brand. It could still be good. It could still be great. It might actually be better than how you'd say it. So
that is super, super cool. I love that. That your whole entire life is your gross, and then your brand is your net. That is such a powerful way to break that down.
yeah.
Like, it just altered my brain chemistry. Such a really simple way to explain something that feels, because I think for me and for a lot of people, the fear is if I simplify and take these pieces away, then I'm inauthentic. I know that, I think if you've been around for any amount of time, you've seen there's a lot of people out there who it's smoke and mirrors, right? Like, we're sold this huge persona, and then you kind of peek behind the curtain. I told my friend the other day, I'm like, I've seen too many wizards behind the curtain. You know, we're in the year of Wicked 2 coming out, and lots of those references. But I'm like, literally, as an entrepreneur, I think I'm so afraid of ever becoming that. And so I want to either overgive or just not give at all, because I feel like I want to be really careful. And that's probably one of my values, is just full authenticity and transparency. And so I think you explaining that is just kind of this piece, and it's very intentional and very chosen and directed, but it doesn't mean it's manipulative or that it's like a farce or that you're putting on a show. But talk to me about that too, on how important it is to have that very specific personal brand, though, because if you don't and you're trying to be everything for everyone, or you're not nailing that in, I mean, scalability is impacted, but even just trust, in trying to be more trustworthy, I'm probably killing my audience's ability to trust me because I'm not just simplifying it down for their brains to digest, right?
Yeah. It's well, there's the trust factor. There's the authenticity. Authenticity is a big word. We want things to be authentic. And there are some great ways of doing that. I mean, think about an artist who has like the original print that they create, but then they also have lithographs. It's still their work. It's just done on a different medium and a little bit more affordable. It's still them. They created it. They just have a team of people that can recreate it, and they still sign off on it. The artist still signs off on it. Yes, this meets my standard. So by creating a brand voice that's specific and developing a team, you're still signing off on all the assets that go out. You're just not necessarily creating them all yourself. You're saying, yes, this is something that I want to represent the Millionaire University. It doesn't have to be you. It can be the brand. And, if you have a team of professors at a university, they all have to be aligned with what you're teaching and on course with the guidelines and the syllabus, but they're allowed to put their own little preference into it. I've had some people with teams where they will have, some emails will come from them, from the name of the personal brand. Sometimes it will have from like it could be from you, or it could be from the Millionaire University team, or even from Millionaire University. Those can be two slightly different voices. They're not necessarily signed off by a person. Sometimes they're signed off by a team, whereas your emails will be signed off by a person. So there are ways of differentiating those elements. Sometimes you're the thought leader, and then the brand is the supporting tactical elements of it. It's almost like you're the head or the heart, and the team is the hands. So you can look at it that way. So that's if you do have a team and you're not upfront, but you talk about your team. That's one way of doing it, of maintaining authenticity. You talked about transparency. I'm actually not a big believer in transparency. I'm a big believer in translucency. I want you to see what I want you to see. you don't see everything. Like looking behind me, my whole house is not blue. I don't have Muppets everywhere. Actually, I do have Muppets everywhere, but I like, so that part is real. But like, this is curated. You see some of it, but you don't see what's off camera. You see parts of it. I will give you glimpses into my life, but I'm not pulling back the curtain and showing you everything. And even if I do pull back the curtain, you're only seeing what's available behind that curtain. You're not seeing what's, outside, what's beyond that. I want you to see a curated version, and that can be messy. I'm not saying hide the mess. That's all the stuff like we want to show people the real struggles and things like that. Sure, show us the relevant parts, but we don't need to see everything. And that's sometimes how we get known for the wrong things, or it becomes
Yeah.
a little creepy how much our audience can know about us.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
happens
And
too.
I think I obviously have some inner work to do, which is ironically what I help other people with. A
We
little
all
bit of
do.
that emotional. We all do. We all have a little mess inside of us. But I think just hearing you say that, where I'm like, oh, the translucency instead of transparency. And I wonder why. I mean, I think it's just years of maybe getting burned and thinking, well, if they had been more transparent, then that wouldn't have happened. But I think as a creator, I know and I see the need for the translucency and curating that. And I think it was like I said earlier, it was so overly curated. And then it was this forced vulnerability where everybody's like, it's kind of a trending thing. Well, I'm just going to open up the door and share all my dirty laundry with you, all in the name of being relatable. It was kind of everybody still strategy chasing. In and of itself, it became a strategy, which is, we could talk for hours about that and the problems that that brought into business. But now I think it's shifting into this safety for everyone. And it's like, I can't serve you. Like, if I'm sitting here trying to help you build a strong foundation for your business and enhance your marketing because you know yourself, yes, there's some of my personal stories that are going to support that and show that I'm an expert.
Yeah.
Do I need to share what my bank account balance is with you today in order to be recognized as legitimate? No. Like, I have a line that I'm going to draw. So, yeah, I think this is really helpful just to clarify that for people listening who are wanting to build a personal brand. They're seeing the need for it. It alleviates some of those fears that I have to put my whole entire life on the internet. Oh my gosh, absolutely not. Like, I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that we're sort of past the whole like struggle porn phase of LinkedIn, where it was
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh my God, look how hard my life is and all of this stuff. And just, it was this cry for sympathy, for empathy, like, see me, help me. And we started like,
Relatability too,
right.
right? Like, I'm so relatable. I'm just like you.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's like, whoa, no, you need help, dude.
Yeah. I
Like,
actually need
like,
you to be strong for me right now.
yeah, maybe log off LinkedIn and go to
Therapy.
better help or whatever it was. It was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
go see a therapist, go see a doctor. You need real support, not just
Yeah.
sympathy. So
Yeah.
so I'm glad that we're beyond that. But I mean, it is still here. I
Mm.
recently signed up for someone's email. I won't get too specific because I don't want to give it away, but it was, let's say it was something like I'm trying to learn how to do a cartwheel or something like that. And then the first email was like, here's a download for how to do a cartwheel. And then the second email started talking about this personal struggle that they went through. And I was like, I just want to learn how to do a cartwheel. I don't,
We just met.
right. And everyone's like, share your story and all that. Okay. Maybe share the story of how you learned how to do a cartwheel. I don't need to know that. And
Mm-hmm.
I just unsubscribed immediately, and it's like, oh, I still can't do a cartwheel, but I don't want them teaching me. I want someone who's showing up as like the cartwheel expert.
Yeah.
It's show me
I
something
think,
that's relevant to the job that I'm
yes.
hiring you to do.
Yeah. That important point of we're not trying to put on a show, but we're also not wanting to oversell our humanness
Yeah.
because we still want to show that we are a resource, that we are a guide, that we are somebody who has some of their crap together that can serve these people. If we're only showing the mess, then it's not going to create safety and trust. And so I think it's a fine line and everybody probably has to find it, which is why the things that you do are really valuable because it is finding that where do I stand as this expert or this professional but also have my humanness in there. I've always wondered, like, how do people, it just feels exhausting to be in corporate because you're all kind of putting on the tie and you're all putting on the heels for a minute. But like beneath it, we all know we're human and we're all thinking these like crazy things at the same time, but you don't talk about it there.
Yeah.
So I think we have to like almost put the professional suit back on in our businesses a little bit more and say, there's just a time and a place and this isn't it because I
Yeah.
want to help people and I can't do that if they're perceiving me as a hot mess or they're only seeing me for my trauma, my stories. we're losing the point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'll share this. There was a time when I got hired because people liked me and I interviewed well, but then I got fired because I couldn't do the job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you need both. You got to be likable, but you got to
Yeah.
be competent. And,
Yeah.
it's the know, like, and trust. Sometimes we forget the trust factor or,
Yeah.
we're trying to get people to know us and like us, but we got to be good at it. And
Right.
I think that's what people want right now. The trust factor, like trust is gone right now, especially with AI and everything. Like Claude is wrong all the time. ChatGPT is wrong all the time. There are ways that we need to still be really good at our job, or at least be learning our job, come into something as an expert. It takes years of training. Um, so it's cool to be honest about what you can do, what you're learning to do, what you want to do, but you still got to be the right person for the job. Not just the right
Mm-hmm.
person, but the right person for the job.
Yeah. Not just a personality hire, not just getting people to follow you on social media because you're super relatable, but then nobody's going to pay you any money because you didn't stand in you didn't stand in that.
Yep.
So I'm curious, kind of with even the copywriting element and the personal brand building. I think people struggle with this a lot as they want to share so much. Do you help people synthesize that down into kind of their core brand story and like knowing, drawing that line in the sand? Do you have a process that kind of helps them figure out, okay, here's the thing that's really going to set this up and help be our curated brand story that brings people in? And here's the stuff that's just not necessary.
Yeah, I do. And it's different for everyone though. So the process, it very often comes to one, figuring out how they're showing up online right now and how their brand voice is, and then figuring out if there's a disconnect. A lot of people hire me like, hey, this is who I am. This is everything I want. I just need more help with content. For them, it's like, cool, let's just distill what's here, document it, and then make it so it can scale. With other people, it's like, I know something's off here, but I don't know what it is. For that, it is more deep work. Very often we have to get into this thing called the story spine. There's the Pixar story spine. It's the same thing. Pixar uses it, so it's kind of known as the Pixar story spine, but it's an old improv storytelling technique where I help people figure out where their origin story is. And are you familiar with the story spine? Do you know it?
I'm not. No.
No, I'm going to butcher it for a second, but it basically comes down to like a fill in the blank template of once upon a time, there was a blank. Every day they blank. But then one day, blank happened. Because of that, blank. Because of that, blank. Because of that, blank. And ever since, until finally, blank. And ever since then, blank. So basically, it's like how life was, what the thing came that disrupted it, all the things that you tried and didn't work, and then what happened when you finally got it right, the big reveal, and then what you've been doing ever since. All the great stories can be told like this. The reason it's called the Pixar story spine is when Pixar found this in their pitch meetings, they have to say what this is, and it needs to be easily summarized. And those are the things that point to who we're fighting for, what they're fighting against, and how the story was won. But it focuses on the key moments. And typically what I'll do with a client is sometimes we'll go through 6 or 7 versions of those to figure out what the actual story is. And then we'll recreate it. Once we have it, we figured out what the actual moments were. Very often people cry. Sometimes I cry. It's like, that's when we figure out what the big thing is. Oh, that's why I do this. That's the important part. That's what's missing in here. Once I can put this in to either stop acting like a poor, struggling person and then figuring out where I am now and own it, I can be the authority in this, in me, and in my skill because of something here. And that gives us a chance to show up stronger.
That's incredible. There's so many people and there's so many services and offers that are going to help you like nail your marketing. And I feel like this is such a core piece that people cannot skip.
Yeah.
If you know your brand story, you know your brand voice, it reveals too what your marketing message is. It reveals your audience a little bit. It reveals the problem you solve.
Yeah.
And it's such an important place to start. It's kind of where I have a lot of my clients come is I coach a lot of coaches, people who've gone through certification programs and they come out of it and they're like, well, I kind of know what my tools are now that I can help people with, but they don't really know the transformation. And I'm like, well, what's yours? what did you do? What did you overcome? What's your before and after? I know you're not completely done, you're in process, but that right there becomes the root of their messaging, their content. And I think this is helpful context to kind of layer in what you do. I'm learning from you that we can create that line in the sand and figure out, okay, we're building this personal brand, but we don't have to share
Yeah.
all of the things that were very, very private and personal in going through this journey. But it starts to pick apart and help you develop your customer avatar and what the desired offers would be for somebody who's going through that again. So
Yeah.
it's really a lot more than just finding a brand voice so that your email lands. It's big. Like, it's very, very important. It's a
Yeah.
ground layer,
Yeah.
brick that you have to lay.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you're seeing this, and that's one of the goals of what I do, because most of the way that brand voice is spoken about, it's at a very high level, and it doesn't work for when you're like on the ground, for the doers, for the boots on the ground, the tactical implementation of it. Like when we say, oh, our brand is friendly, cool, show me a brand that's not friendly. And now you can, like, dbrand is a cell phone case that like makes fun of the readers. Like there are some great examples of brands that are not, who are doing it differently and that owning the fact that they're not a friendly brand. But it's a generic term of nothingness. And even if it says, we write like your next door neighbor. Okay, cool. You're thinking of someone, you're thinking of your next door neighbor. That's not my next door neighbor.
I don't like my
Either
next
way,
door neighbor. I don't want to write like them.
yeah. I've got two next door neighbors. One is like a drinking buddy. Like, oh, I can't put that in my brand because that's going to have curses everywhere. And the other one is like, just no. Just no. So whenever you're thinking of who the next door neighbor is, we all have someone different in mind. We're all right, but we're never agreeing on what that person is. It's open up to so many different opinions and everyone is right. So there's no real definitive guideline of what that is. We need to get granular. And in my origin story, when I figured out the reason why I was struggling in my corporate career with writing, where everything would go through reviews and my confidence was just getting destroyed, the key moment was when I figured out that most brand guides are written for marketers. They're not written for writers. And when I figured that out, I was like, oh, everyone has an opinion and everyone's right. I know more than this and I can be the expert on it, but no one's letting me because this guide is in the way. Everyone thinks that they know everything. They don't. I need to find a way to get this more practical. Once I figured that out, I was able to defend my work. I was able to explain why I made certain choices, why the vocabulary, the tone, and cadence fit this brand versus that brand, and why some of the suggestions, well, good suggestions might not actually be right for this piece of copy right now. And when I was able to create that, people are like, oh, that's awesome. Okay, clearly you're the expert on this. I'm going to start deferring to your opinion. I might ask questions, but if you have the right answer for me, we'll do it. Eventually, the CEO is going to sign off on things and decide anyway. But if I can defend my work, I can feel good about it and I can put my name on it. And ultimately, hopefully the CEO could put their name on it too.
Yeah.
That's what changed everything for me. That's my Pixar story spine. There's some different elements, but when I figured out the tactical elements of like, all right, the guide that we have here is kind of garbage. It makes people feel happy about their brand. They're like, yes, this is us. Okay, but how do we bring that to life? That's what I need.
Yeah, that's huge. Oh my gosh. I just kind of want to recap because we've covered a lot of ground and it's been a good flowing organic conversation. And just to bring this to people who are like, hey, I heard this. I think this is really, really valuable. It's starting to click now, the difference between personal brand and personal brand, right?
Yeah.
So just to kind of like recap, give people some places to start. If they can't work with you directly, what are some really good questions to ask themselves to help derive what that brand story is, or what they're, going more granular? Do you have any guidance on how they can do that for themselves as much as possible?
So yeah, this is actually, it's an interesting question. I don't have a version of the Pixar story spine available, but you can Google it. You'll find it. There's story spine, Pixar story spine. You'll find the outline. Try to do that. But when you do it, you have to write at least 3 different versions because each one's going to have a different starting point. Your first one, like, when I was a little boy, I used to love writing. No, that's not it. We need to fast forward and then you figure out what the relevant pieces are. They're going to be on 3 different pieces of paper, and then you just start like puzzling it together. So that is a great place to start. The other thing is figuring out what you don't want to do anymore. That's the best way to do it. They say that optimization is the removal of things that aren't necessary. And maybe if you write stories about your kids, maybe there's a rule that any story you tell has to be at least 2 years old. Something like that. That's just a random example that is a true example that I've used with someone. But there are ways of creating boundaries to be like, you know what? Anything within 2 years is mine. It's not my brand. What's me? What's my brand? And we slowly begin filtering things out until we get very clear on the things that are, for me, it's what's Justin Blackman and what's justinblackman.com, and figuring out what the two are and what is absolutely essential to everything. So it's really just a filtering exercise.
Okay. That's super helpful. So I was going to say, come back to that story spine, because that's a great exercise for people to go through. And then also just understanding like that core story and knowing, and that will help you derive that too, right?
Yeah.
Like you're kind of piecing together your journey. Maybe there's different chapters of your journey, and then you're finding that core thing and really just starting to ask. I mean, I think even that one question, what belongs in Justin Blackman and justinblackman.com, and just kind of creating that dividing line for now. And I love the 2-year rule. Like that's something that I think a lot of people could follow. I've tried to teach that of like, there's this past, present, future. Like the things you're going through now might not be the time to share them until the future. And that will be your content. Share some of the past, document the current so that in the future you can share it. I think that's like a good way to protect some of your personal privacy and peace, because I think in this oversharing world we've lived in, it can be tempting to be like, yesterday this happened to my son and I'm going to tell you blah, 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 blah. And then later you're like, why in the world did I share that? That was way too fresh.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would add to that of just structuring, helping people to really master this personal brand?
So to go back to what you were saying there, I think it's Brene Brown. She gets credit for it. I think she's the one who first started saying it, or at least popularized it. But it's the share from the scar, not the open wound. So it's like, wait till things are healed and finished. Wait till the story is done to tell it. When it's about a struggle. So, but then to get back to your other question about, anything additional, honestly, it's hard to do for yourself, because there are going to be pieces that like, no, this is essential for me. This is who I am. And just because it's who you are, it doesn't mean who your brand is. And some things are going to carry over, but also that's going to change. Nostalgia piece there was like, so whimsical is one of my favorite words. That for a long time was part of my brand. And absolutely that had to be in there. Everything had to be funny and punchy. But then as I got a little bit older, it's like, all right, I stopped being funny. I can still be fun, but I kind of stopped being funny and everything. Just stuff got a little bit more serious as I went into it. And I used to have a persona that we call friend at the bar, is one of the voice types. Is the storyteller. But I told a lot of people stories that weren't mine. They were like just good, great, relevant pieces of information. It wasn't necessarily something that happened to me. It just was a good story. But the more I started to teach, the more I had my own. And I was like, you know what? I'm actually moving more toward an authoritative voice. I moved from a friend at the bar to a parent. So it's like, all right, the funny stuff doesn't need to come with me. It can, but it doesn't need to. So there are times where your voice is going to change and evolve and shift. It's all part of it. So it's okay
you're
to
shifting and
leave.
evolving. Like you're growing. It's okay to be like, you know what? That worked for then. That just feels it's not aligned anymore. And I don't want to emulate that in my content and my energy anymore. I've matured, or I've changed, I've evolved, and it's okay to bring that brand along with you.
Yeah. It's, it's part of your story, but it doesn't need to be in the current chapter.
That's a great way to summarize it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know you're the expert at this. You've very much shown us that. Where's the best place for people to connect with you if they're like, yep, I don't want to try to do this for myself. Bring it on. Let's do it. Let's establish my brand voice. Where should they go?
So justinblackman.com is by far the easiest place. And I've got a teaching arm over at Brand Voice Academy, but I think for the majority of your listeners, justinblackman.com.
Amazing. Okay, we'll link to that in the show notes, you guys. Thank you so much, Justin. You have been, not to use another pun, with what we're saying, but you've been an open book, and I've loved reading everything that you've shared with us or listening.
Well, thanks. I love it.